Aloha, dear friends. Welcome to the Sunday morning devotional program sponsored by the Spiritual Assemblies of the Baha'is of South DeKalb County and Sandy Springs, Georgia. So wonderful to have you with us today. Across the globe, the teachings of the Baha'i faith, brought to us more than 150 years ago by His Holiness Baha'u'llah, its founder, whose name in Arabic means the glory of God, have inspired and continue to inspire individuals and communities as they strive to improve their own lives and contribute to the advancement of civilization. Baha'i beliefs address such essential themes as the oneness of God and religion, the oneness of humanity, and freedom from all forms of prejudice, the inherent nobility of the human being, the progressive revelation of religious truth, a gradual unfolding of God's purpose with the appearance of each divine teacher, the development of spiritual qualities which allow us to reflect the image of God, the image that God made us in, the integration of worship and service, with work performed in the spirit of service actually being accounted as worship in the eyes of God. The fundamental equality of the sexes, more widely evidenced in a setting of equal opportunity. The harmony between religion and science as an established fact. The centrality of justice in all human endeavor. The importance of education, particularly for children, and the dynamics of the relationships that bind together individuals, communities, institutions, as humanity advances towards its collective maturity. Again, welcome. We're pleased to have you all join us. We'll begin with opening devotions. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking and silence your electronic devices if you are speaking. Thank you. Dungting.
I adjure thee by the might, O my God. Let no harm beset me in times of tests, and in moments of heedless guide, my steps are right through thine inspiration. Thou God, potent art, thou to do what thou desirest. No one can withstand thy will or thwart thy purpose. Above.
Kathy.
Many a chilled heart, O my God, hath been set ablaze with the fire of thy cause, and many a slumberer hath been wakened by the sweetness of thy voice. How many are the strangers who have sought shelter beneath the shadow of the tree of thy oneness, and how numerous the thirsty ones who have panted after the fountain of thy living waters in thy days. Blessed is he that hath set himself towards thee, and haste to attain the dayspring of the lights of thy face. Blessed is he who, with all his affections, hath turned to the dawning place of thy revelation, and the fountainhead of thine inspiration. Blessed is he that hath extended in thy path what thou didst bestow upon him through thy bounty and favor. Blessed is he who in his sore longing after thee hath cast away all else except thyself. Blessed is he who hath enjoyed intimate communion with thee and rid himself of all attachment to anyone save thee. I beseech thee, O my Lord, by him who is thy name, who through the power of thy sovereignty and might hath risen above the horizon of his prison, to ordain for everyone what becometh thee and beseemeth thine exaltation. Thy might in truth is equal to all things. Baha'u'llah.
Dorothy.
My God, whom I worship and adore, I bear witness unto thy unity and thy oneness, and acknowledge thy gifts, both in the past and in the present. Thou art the all-bountiful, the overflowing showers of whose mercy have rained down upon high and low alike, and the splendors of whose grace have been shed over both the obedient and the rebellious. O God of mercy, before whose door the quintessence of mercy hath bowed down, and round the sanctuary of whose cause loving kindness in its inmost spirit hath circled. We beseech thee, entreating thine ancient grace and seeking thy present favor, that thou mayest have mercy upon all who are the manifestations of the world of being, and deny them not the outpourings of thy grace in thy days. All are but poor and needy, and thou verily art the all-possessing, the all-subduing, the all-powerful Baha'u'llah.
Ernest.
Praise be thou, O my Lord, my God. This is thy servant who has quoted from the hands of thy grace the wine of thy tender mercy and taste of thy sovereign, of thy love. In thy days I beseech thee by the embroidery of thy name, whom no grief can hinder from rejoicing in thy love, from grazing on thy face, and whom all the hosts of the hills are powerless to cause to turn aside from the path of thy pleasure, to supply him with the good thing that thou propose, and to raise him up to such height that he will guard the world, even as a shadow that vanish, suffer from the twinkling of an eye. Keep him safe also, O my God, by the power of thy immeasurable majesty, from all that thou abhorrest. Thou very art the Lord and the Lord of all worlds. Baha'u'llah.
Greg.
O thou loving provider, these souls have hearkened to the summons of thy kingdom and have gazed upon the glory of the Sun of Truth. They have risen upward to the refreshing skies of love. They are enamored by thy nature, and they worship thy beauty. Unto thee have they turned themselves, speaking together of thee, seeking out thy dwelling, and thirsting for the water brooks of thy heavenly realm. Thou art the giver, the bestower, the ever-loving.
Matthew.
O my brother, a pure heart is as a mirror. Cleanse it with the burnish of love and severance from all save God. that the true sun may shine therein, and the eternal morning dawn. Then wilt thou clearly see the meaning of earth and heaven cannot contain me. What can alone contain me is the heart of him that believeth in me. And thou wilt take up thy life in thy hand, and with infinite longing cast it before thy newly found beloved. Baha'u'llah.
Deng Ting.
This is the day in which the testimony of the Lord has been fulfilled, the day in which the word of God has been made manifest, and his evidence firmly established. His voice is calling you unto that which shall profit you, and enjoin you to observe that which shall draw you nigh into God, the Lord of Revelation, Baha'u'llah.
Kathy.
The whole human race is submerged in the sea of the mercy of the Lord, and we are all the sheep of the one divine shepherd. Whatever shortcomings exist amongst us must be remedied. For example, those who are ignorant must be educated so that they may become wise. The sick must be treated until they recover. Those who are immature must be trained in order to reach maturity. Those asleep must be awakened. All this must be accomplished through love and not through hatred and hostility. Abdul Baha.
Justice is not limited. It is a universal quality. Its operation must be carried out in all classes, from the highest to the lowest. Justice must be sacred, and the rights of all people must be considered. Desire for others only that which you desire for yourselves. Then shall we rejoice in the sun of justice, which shines from the horizon of God. Thank you to all of today's speakers. Next, we're going to listen to a healing prayer. If any of you wish to remember a loved one through this prayer for healing, please feel free to call out their name at this time.
Walter Dickey.
Andy Maslowski,
Trish Hendon,
Josie Reynolds,
And now we are blessed to have a musical offering.
Hallelujah, Bahaula. Hallelujah, Totosa. 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 Hallelujah, 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 Totosa, Hallelujah, Totosa, Hallelujah, Totosa, Hallelujah, Bahaula, Hallelujah, Totosa, Hallelujah, Bahaula, Hallelujah, Totosa, Hallelujah, Bahaula, Hallelujah, Totosa, Hallelujah, Bahaula, Hallelujah, Totosa.
Friends, each week we're blessed to have a guest presenter share with us their insights on a particular topic. This week, we are honored to have with us Dr. Gregory Watson. Gregory Watson entered the doctoral program at the Harvard Graduate School of Education in 1987 with a master's degree in educational psychology, which focused on holistic education and the origin of exceptional abilities in young children. Inspired by the Baha'i teachings, for his doctoral thesis, he created a conceptual framework to help schools develop curricula for global citizenship as the moral ethic of global competency, a path to social justice and unity. He says his topic could have been renamed Teaching the Oneness of Humanity to Humanity. Greg spent 3 years lecturing on this theme in various universities in China. Other more adventuresome activities have included being an ambulance driver and an emergency medical technician in a hospital emergency room, a professional skydiver for a water ski show, and flying across the United States in an airplane he rebuilt. He loves nature and likes outdoor activities such as horseback riding, scuba diving, boating, motorcycle touring, camping, and mountain climbing. After his academic training, He served as a research fellow at the Harvard Institute for Development and as a consultant to the conflict management group of the Harvard Law School. He has worked as a grant reader for the U.S. Department of Education in Washington, taught developmental psychology in the graduate program for teachers at the University of Massachusetts, and taught science in a public middle school. Greg has 3 children and is married to Waithira Kagira Watson from Kenya, who works as Senior Associate Program Director for the Task Force for Global Health in the Neglected Tropical Disease Support Center. Greg is presently working on 2 books, one that could be classified as an anti-racist initiative, in which he terms Teaching the Oneness of Humanity to Humanity. Friends, please welcome Greg Watson.
Thank you. I'm trying to turn on the camera. There we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone. And I'm glad we have this opportunity to study together. And I thought I'd show up to find out what I had to say. And I worked on this PowerPoint because I felt you always needed to see something, and I didn't want to just be a talking head. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, it's a little bit quiet, but it's all, I think we can all hear you. We can just turn up our own volumes, make it a little clearer.
Okay, maybe I can turn my voice up a little bit. I have a bit of a raspy throat, however, this morning.
That's a good bit. That's better, actually. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I normally would have just spoken without the PowerPoint if I had a live audience. And I think sometimes the media gets in the way, but there are so many quotes I want to share that that's going to facilitate this morning. It'll be more of a study session for us, perhaps, than it is a presentation. So I'm going to start the screen now, and I'm going to look at my clock, and let's begin. Everyone can see it okay? Okay.
Yes.
Who is God? And where is God in troubled times? Can we call upon God for help? Does God answer prayers? What is the Baha'i concept of God? God is the creator. Only the creator is worthy of the title God. Hence, any reference to God is a reference to the creator. God is unknowable, incomprehensible in his essence, and only knowable through his attributes, as revealed in nature and through the prophets. From the writings of the Bab, God is indeed the maker of all things. He giveth sustenance in plenty to whomsoever he willeth. He is the creator, the source of all beings, the fashioner, the almighty, the maker, the all-wise. All do his bidding, and all the dwellers of earth and heaven celebrate his praise, and unto him shall all return. Every effect has a cause. Creation is constantly being brought into being. Baha'u'llah wrote, everything must needs have an origin, and every building a builder. Verily the word of God is the cause which hath preceded the contingent world. A world which is adorned with the splendors of the Ancient of Days, yet is being renewed and regenerated at all times. Immeasurably exalted is the God of wisdom, who hath raised this sublime structure. All praise to the unity of God, and all honor to him, the sovereign Lord, the incomparable and all glorious ruler of the universe, who out of utter nothingness hath created the reality of all things, who from naught hath brought into being the most refined and subtle elements of his creation, and who, rescuing his creatures from the abasement of remoteness and the perils of ultimate extinction, hath received them into his kingdom of incorruptible glory. Nothing short of his all-encompassing grace, his all-pervading mercy could have possibly achieved it. How could it otherwise have been possible for sheer nothingness to have acquired by itself the worth and capacity to emerge from its state of non-existence into the realm of being. The people, Abdu'l-Baha wrote, all of them have pictured a God in the realm of the mind and worship that image which they have made for themselves. And yet that image is comprehended, the human mind being the comprehender thereof. And certainly the comprehender is greater than that which lieth within its grasp. Consider then how all the peoples of the world are bowing the knee to a fancy of their own contriving, and how they have created a creator within their own minds, and they call it the fashioner of all that is, whereas in truth it is but an illusion. Thus the people are worshiping only an error of perception, an error in imagination. But that essence of essences, that invisible invisibles, is sanctified above all human speculation, and never to be overtaken by the mind of man. Never shall that immemorial reality lodge within the compass of a contingent being. So we've talked about the place initially, the place where God resides, and it's not within the compass of a contingent being. He is another realm. And of that realm, no understanding can be won. No access can be gained thereto. All entry is forbidden there. The utmost one can say is that its existence can be proved, but the conditions of its existence are unknown. That such an existence does exist, the philosophers and learned doctors, one and all, have understood, but whenever they tried to learn something of its being, they were left bewildered and dismayed. They went their way out of this life. For to comprehend the state and the inner mystery of that essence of essences, that most secret of secrets, would be more than humankind can bear. It is beyond the realm of possibility for him to grasp that unseen reality, holy and sanctified above all skeptics' doubts. For this, other faculties are required, other senses. Should such powers become available to him, then could a human being receive some knowledge of that world. Otherwise, never. So we have to ask, are there powers that could become available to him? The scholars have basically agreed that there are 4 basic ways to know that God exists. I've added something. There's reason and logic and logical proofs. Abdu'l-Baha lists those. There's God's revelation in nature when you see the wonders of his handiwork and you realize that this creation could not have arisen by itself. There's the revelation in the text, that is the word of God. And there's the revelation inside a person's own self, the person seeking rebirth, the person seeking to know himself. And this is personal experience or phenomenological. So we'll go over those a little more in the presentation. Out of nothingness, reality came to be. Everything was created from nothing. In general, Baha'i teachings agree with scientific thinking. Here's an example of advanced planning by Stephen Hawking. He says it would be very difficult to explain why the universe should have begun in just this way, except as an act of a God who intended to create beings like us. The numbers are too precise. Charge of electrons, things like that. For example, the initial state of the universe and the initial rate of expansion of the Big Bang would have had to be chosen very precisely to avoid the recollapse before it reached its present size. Baha'i teachings agree with science. God chose the initial configuration of the universe for reasons we cannot hope to understand. This is Hawking again. This would certainly have been within the power of an omnipotent being. But if he had started it off in such an incomprehensible way, why did he choose to let it evolve according to the laws that we could understand? The whole history of science has been that the gradual has been the gradual realization that events do not happen in an arbitrary manner, but that they reflect a certain underlying order. Einstein said that his conviction of the presence of a superior reasoning power which reveals itself in the incomparable universe forms his idea of God. And that's the statement of a scientist. Sometimes there's a difference between the God that's acknowledged by scientists and the God of religion. Whoa. Not sure what happened there. Let's try again. Do you know if you have to exit the sharing to be able to start it over?
You shouldn't. It should show us whatever you're seeing, essentially. But if you're having trouble, it can help to exit the screen share and then start it again.
Okay, I want to start it on this particular slide where we were,
Mm-hmm.
and not from the beginning.
Right. So that you control just by keeping yourself on this slide. And when you do the screen share, it'll show that slide.
Yes, I do know how to do it. Well, I've got it. Sorry. So there is sometimes a difference between the God acknowledged by scientists and the God of religion. Screen won't advance. The God of science is the first cause or source of existence. But there may be no notion of compassion or that God cares for us or that he cares to be in contact with us or communicate with us. The God of religion is both the creator and one who reveals his will to man through the revelations of the major prophets or manifestations of God, and sometimes in our listening, the Holy Spirit speaking to our heart and mind. But that's not proof for anybody else. In agreement with Einstein's theological view that a superior reasoning power reveals itself in the incomparable universe, Baha'u'llah wrote 100 years earlier, "Look at the world and ponder a while upon it. It unveileth the book of its own self before thine eyes, and revealeth that which the pen of thy Lord, the fashioner, the all-informed, hath inscribed therein. It will acquaint thee with that which is within it and upon it, and will give thee such clear explanations as to make thee independent of every eloquent expounder." Before they call, I will answer is found in the book of Isaiah. God will answer anyone. He answers prayers potentially. Before we were born into this world, we did not pray. Oh, did we not pray? Oh God, give me a mother, give me 2 fountains of bright milk, purify the air for my breathing, prepare food for my sustenance and living. Did we not pray potentially for these needed blessings before we were created? when we came into this world, did we not find our prayers answered? Did we not find mother, father, food, light, home, and every other necessity and blessing, although we did not actually ask for them? Now let's take a look. I just wanted to answer that question about prayer that was in the title. Now let's look at some aspects of other religions and man's search for the meaning of life, and then come back to Baha'i. I'm going to look at this concept of God versus God. God is anything worshipped or given fealty, loyalty by oath, or giving your heart, or being dedicated to it in some way. Whether it's a live being, an inanimate object, or an ideology. The monotheist and polytheist religious traditions have a sense that a God is a superhuman being or a spirit worshipped as having power over nature or human fortunes, welfare, or destiny. Gods are considered divine and sacred. This is a kind of dictionary definition. Saints, heroes, and divine attributes became personified as gods. This is my understanding. Over time, in some of the ancient traditions, heroes became represented as gods, while special rank remained highest for the supreme deity. That's true for Hinduism, which for many people just looks like a panoply of multiple gods. But in Hinduism, in the Upanishads, for example, there is reserved status for the supreme being. This idea of gods is also discussed in the Bible in an interesting way. Jesus said, "Is it not written in your law? I said, ye are gods." Looking at the human being as being the gods. Likewise, the attributes of God became personified in these religions. For example, in the Hindu triple deity of supreme divinity, which includes Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the attributes of the creator, the protector, and the destroyer are combined into one being. As the creator's principle of recycling matter, Shiva looks like the destroyer, but it's just the principle of recycling of life and entropy as far as science is concerned. So you have Shiva, the destroyer, Vishnu, the protector, and Brahma, the creator, all in this triune God. In China, we have these other symbols about the creation and how it got started. And the helix of Nuwa and Fuxi symbolize the beginning of life. This is fascinating drawing, these drawings. If you notice, they are very similar to the DNA helix. So we have these sort of archetypal metaphors in our symbolism that probably reside in our unconscious. But we have the combination here of the male-female principle, which is replete throughout the Chinese culture. This principle of the union of opposites, light, darkness, being, non-being, up, down, in and out, male and female, is represented in the Bhagavad, the symbol that you've seen everywhere. Undoubtedly, everybody's seen this. Astonishingly, scholarship of the ancient Hebrew texts present the female principle personified as Asherah, who is interpreted as the consort or wife of Yahweh. And this is a recent fascinating discussion among scholars, but they're pretty agreed on these texts having this representation of the female principle in the Bible, but it sounds so strange for them to say things like God had a wife. Krishna had a consort as well. I think this is my favorite from the Chinese culture, from Taoism. There is a thing, formless yet complete, before heaven and earth it existed, without sound, without substance. It stands alone and unchanging. It is all pervading and unfailing. One may think of it as the mother of all beneath heaven. We do not know its name, but we call it Tao. Now, this sounds like an impersonal view of God rather than a personal God. But we'll carry this further. In the Bible, St. Paul makes a declaration to the Greeks in Acts 17th chapter. He proclaims that the Christians worship the same deity that the ancient Greeks worshipped and called agnostos theos, the unknown God. O people of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious, for as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship. And this, he, is what I'm going to proclaim unto you. Paul continues, the God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in the temples built by human hands. And he is not severed by human hands. He is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. You know, people make offerings to the gods and take them baskets of fruit and things. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he's not far away from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. It's very interesting. He was quoting a Greek philosopher, sort of a semi-mythical Greek philosopher. Paul said, he is not far from us. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, hidden. Seek and you shall find. Baha'u'llah quoted a poet who wrote, wonder not if my best beloved is closer to me than mine own self. Wonder at this, that I, despite such nearness, should still be so far removed from him. God revealed that we are closer to him than his life vein, that he is closer to man than his life vein. So when did man begin to worship? And what did he worship? And why? The speculation is it was about 40,000 years ago. But our records are, and that's somewhat based on how they think the brain evolved and through the DNA. This is an interesting aspect of brain research here. I'm quoting something from Abdul Baha that I think relates to it. Before all else, God created the mind. So if that's true, instead of the mind arising from the physicality of the brain, and it was the reverse, the brain had to catch up and get ready to house the mind. The brain evolved to allow the mind to experience self-reflective consciousness, or what's often called the consciousness of self. When that happened, the human being conscious of himself, he could say, I am. This was also man's recognition that he did not create himself, and his search for the creator began. And so you see in all these cultures, this quest for the creator and the reverence for the creative principle and the creative instruments of God, such as the sun and the moon. The Egyptian god Ra is represented here on the right as representing the god of the sun. And but we don't really know how he communed with the creator. On the lower left over here, you see the dagger shaft of light of the Asazi people in New Mexico. And this, of course, is Stonehenge, which was about the same time as Egypt a little later. No other gods before me. In the 10 commandments, the first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me, is so critical to all of the Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and I would include Baha'i, but with a caveat. It guides the religion's followers away from worshiping gods other than their Lord and Creator. In the early days, this meant from idol worship. But we have other forms of idolatry today. Today, holding an ideology above the worship of God is considered a form of idolatry, as is racism, because you place one human being above another. You're placing a human being above the image of God. False gods. False gods are not false in the sense that they do not exist, but in the sense that they should not be worshipped. That is, they're not worthy of worship. They've been given attributes or virtues or stature that they don't possess or that they don't deserve. For example, humans have attributed consciousness and volition or willpower to false gods as if they were living entities that could create something, which of course, if they're a stone or something, they wouldn't be. Likewise, we bow down before ideologies today. Thus, only the one true Creator is worthy of worship, and He demands that we don't worship anything else, which is what is meant by not having other gods before me. Hence, we understand the logic behind the Islamic call to prayer. There is no God but God. And so in this presentation, even any reference to God is a reference to the Creator. Reverend Martin Luther King wrote a group of sermons on false gods around 1953. And in The False God of Nationalism, he argues that God and nationalism are incompatible and asks, will we continue to serve the false god of racial prejudice, or will we serve the God who made of one blood all men to dwell upon the face of the earth? In his concluding sermon in the series, King reflects on the tragic consequences which develop when men worship the almighty dollar. Our worship of materialism has displaced God in our minds and in our everyday dealings with one another. There's no other God but thee. Here's a quote, here's a passage from the writings reaffirming this. All praise, O my God, be to thee, who art the source of all glory and majesty, of greatness and honor, of sovereignty and dominion, of loftiness and grace, of awe and power. Of all who are in heaven and on earth, none can withstand the operation of thy sovereign will. From all eternity thou didst rule the entire creation, and thou wilt continue forevermore to exercise thy dominion over all created things. There is none other God but thee, the Almighty, the most exalted, the all-powerful, the all-wise. Now you notice praising God through his attributes. And this reaffirms what I started with in my affirmation that is declared in the Baha'i writings, that you cannot know God in his essence. You can only know him through his attributes. Here is listed sovereignty, dominion, loftiness, grace, awe, power, and of course, he is the first principle of creation, of creativity. His knowledge will remain forever above the grasp of human vision and understanding and beyond the reach of human words and deeds. To the truth of this utterance, existence itself and all that hath appeared therefrom bear eloquent testimony. It is clear and evident, therefore, that the first bestowal of God is the Word, which brought creation into being. And its discoverer and recipient is the power of understanding. This was such an awakening for me just in the last month. This word is the most foremost instructor in the school of existence and the revealer of him who is the Almighty. All that is seen is visible only through the light of its wisdom. All that is manifest is but a token of its knowledge. All names are but its name, and the beginning and end of all matters must needs depend on it. Now, the power of understanding is elevated to such an extent in the Egon that Baha'u'llah declares that the portals of divine unity and understanding are the essential and highest purpose for creation. Understanding is the essential and highest purpose. If you don't understand, the word of God is not worth anything to you, right? Having created the world and all that liveth and moveth therein, he, through the direct operation of his unconstrained and sovereign will, chose to confer upon man the unique distinction and capacity to know him and to love him, a capacity that must needs be regarded as the generating impulse and the primary purpose underlying the whole creation. Upon the reality of man, he hath focused the radiance of all of his names and attributes and made it a mirror of his own self. Alone of all created things, man hath been singled out for so great a favor, so enduring a bounty. It occurred to me that we were given this capacity to know and to love him so that we could discover the image of God within ourselves and meet him there. Abdu'l-Baha says that the image of God is not yet realized until we acquire virtues and we acquire spirituality. To know oneself is true wisdom. That's a quote from Lao Tzu. True loss is for him whose days have been spent in utter ignorance of his self. He who hath known God hath known himself. And be ye not like those who forget God, and whom he hath therefore caused to forget their own selves. The first effulgence which hath dawned from the horizon of the mother book is that man should know his own self. How do we do that? There are a number of formulas in the writings and prescriptions for attempting to find God and inside yourself. Here's one. It's from the Kitab-i-Igan. When a true seeker determineth to take the step of search in the path leading unto the knowledge of the Ancient of Days, he must, before all else, cleanse his heart, which is the seat of the revelation of the inner mysteries of God. Only when the lamp of search, of earnest striving, of longing desire, of passionate devotion, of fervid love, of rapture and ecstasy is kindled within the seeker's heart, and the breeze of his loving kindness is wafted upon his soul, will the lights of knowledge and certitude envelop his being. It's much more beautiful to read the whole passage, but I didn't think we had time. It does continue several paragraphs down. At that hour will the mystic herald through the trumpet blast of knowledge awaken the heart, the soul. Then will the manifold favors and outpouring grace of the Holy and Everlasting Spirit confer such new life upon the seeker that he will find himself endowed with a new eye, a new ear, a new heart, and a new mind. He will contemplate the manifest signs of the universe and will penetrate the hidden mysteries of the soul. Gazing with the eye of God, he will perceive within every atom a door that leadeth him to the stations of absolute certitude. He will discover in all things the mysteries of divine revelation and the evidences of an everlasting manifestation. He will discover within every atom a door that leadeth him to the stations of absolute certitude. That pretty much covers the natural world, which Baha'u'llah said Everything that has been created is a sign of the revelation of God within it. Nature. And this is pointing back to God being the God of revelation, not just the creator God, the God of creation. And since there can be no tie of direct intercourse to bind the one true God with his creation, remember that those passages where it says we have no access to him, we cannot know his essence, and no resemblance whatsoever can exist between the transient and the eternal, the contingent and the absolute. He hath ordained that in every age and dispensation a pure and stainless soul be made manifest in the kingdoms of earth and heaven. Unto this subtle, this mysterious and ethereal being, he hath assigned a twofold nature, the physical, pertaining to the world of matter, and the spiritual, which is born of the substance of God himself. He hath, moreover, conferred upon him a double station. The first station, which is related to his innermost reality, representeth him as one whose voice is the voice of God himself. To this testifieth the tradition, manifold and mysterious is my relationship with God. I am he himself, and he is I myself, except that I am, and he is that he is. The second station is the human station, exemplified by the following verses. I am but a man like you. We can think of a number of Bible verses where this tradition is exemplified. And for example, Jesus Christ said, he who has seen me hath seen the Father. And then he has the rejoinder, except that I am, and he is that he is. He says, the Father is greater than I. And of course, the fact that he speaks about the Father being different than himself is the very designation, Father, and calling himself the Son of Man, or others referring to him as the Son, makes that distinction. There are many, many, many verses of his double station. In fact, I could show them to you since we have a little extra time. I wanted to end with just a brief summary of some things that Stephen said earlier, that the Baha'i faith is the faith of God, eternal in the past and eternal in the present. His teaching is the same as Christ. For example, living in a Christian nation, I want to mention that our culture is dominantly Christian. So Baha'u'llah's teaching is the same as Christ, but it's renewed for the modern age. There's only one religion, and all the prophets have taught it. Is also a principle that's explained in the Bible, the 5th chapter of Micah, the 2nd verse, in 1 Peter, 1st chapter, verse 10. It even explains that the Spirit of Christ was in the prophets before Jesus was born. One of the founders of the Christian church, one of the great fathers of the church, Augustine, or Augustine, depending on how you wish to pronounce his name, taught that the religion which existed amongst the ancients was the same as the religion that we now call Christianity since the coming of Christ. The Baha'i message is a call to religious unity and not an invitation to a new religion, not a new path to immortality. God forbid. It is the ancient path, cleared of the debris of imaginations and superstitions of men, of the debris of strife and misunderstanding. I had some tributes that I had cut and pasted. I'm not sure that they're in this particular version, but I think I can quote some of them from memory. One of the foremost scientists of the 20th century was Luther Burbank, a great botanist. And he said he was hardly in accord with the Baha'i movement. And he said, what we really need in the world is a religion of peace. And the Baha'i faith is the religion of peace more than any other. Dr. George Washington Carver, who was a deeply spiritual man and a devout Christian, who was responsible for all the work at Tuskegee on the peanut, that's what he's most remembered for, he said of the Baha'i faith, he said, you hold within your organization the key to solve all of our difficulties, both real and imaginary. That's something to ponder. Leo Tolstoy, who wrote War and Peace, may have become a Baha'i on his deathbed practically toward the end of his life, but he did write earlier than that Baha'u'llah's teachings now present us with the purest and highest form of religious thinking. Queen Marie of Romania said, if you ever hear the name of Baha'u'llah or Abdu'l-Baha, do not put their writings away from you, but let those soul-stirring words sink into your heart as they have into mine. And I think she referred to them as healing. She had a difficult period in her life when they were healing for her. There's so many more and wonderful contemporary quotes. I'm impressed by a number of people who have recognized the Baha'i work in anti-racism. Cornel West, for example, is a big fan of and acknowledged that Baha'i has been engaged in this for over 100 years. I have a quote from The Guardian I want to read, if it's still here. Let's see if I can get it. Because I think we do have time now.
If we could wrap up in about 5 minutes, would be great.
I can't hear you, Stephen.
If we could wrap up in about 5 minutes, that would be
I
great.
don't know. My speaker went off, I guess. Let me unplug this. Let's try that.
If we could wrap up in about 5 minutes, that would be good.
Okay. Were you able to hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay. The Guardian in 1941, which was 11, 12 years before Martin Luther King identified nationalism and racism as false gods, The Guardian wrote about the three false gods of racism, nationalism, communism. He included fascism, I think would be included based on his description of what he was talking about. And I want to just find this one quote. Since it's apropos to our time of unity building in America.
Greg, are you there?
Yeah.
So I thought you might have frozen.
I'm not dead yet. Okay, let's see here. May not have it. So maybe we could have some questions, and we can continue the discussion that way. Your microphone is off, Stephen.
Yeah, if you could exit the share screen, and that way we can see everybody more easily.
Yes.
All right. So thank you, Greg. That was quite interesting. So do you have any questions or thoughts? Well, I kept thinking, I don't know, you probably read this too, Greg. I kept thinking myself about and I can't remember the name of the book any longer, but John Hatcher and I think two other scholars, Baha'i scholars, wrote a book once, rather thin, but very interesting. And they talked about the idea that there are essentially two values in the world whose value cannot be usurped. So one, of course, was God, and the second one was humanity. And so, because when we were talking about ideologies, for example, that was part of their argument that if you allow anything, any ideology, any material thing to have more value for you than those two things, you no longer have a religion, you have an ideology. You're worshiping a false god, essentially, as you were saying, So I kept thinking of that one. It's a very interesting way of thinking about what constitutes true religion and what constitutes false religion, really, which is a major question for all of us, I think.
Yes, and in that text, it was John Hatcher said that once you put ideology above the highest value, he said the highest value in existence is God, and the highest value in creation is humanity. And if you put an ideology above humanity, that it's idolatry, because humanity is created in the image of God. So that is, I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, I was thinking about it when I read that passage. Forgotten the name of the book at the moment. But I'm pretty sure I got the quote pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm. So any other comments or questions? Sophie?
Hi, this is not Sophie, but this is Arik.
Hello, Arik.
Hello. You guys are just talking about the ideology over humanity, but I just wanted to ask to sort of clarify or elaborate on those terms because I'm not exactly sure on what it means that humanity is the highest value in creation and what it means to put an ideology, like what makes an ideology different from a religion.
Do you want to touch that one, Greg?
Well, the first part, if you're thinking, the second part was what makes an ideology different from a religion. Well, religion is even from the Latin in its origin, and you could say it's definitional, that its purpose is to bind man back to God, or to reunite man with God. And from a Baha'i perspective, the major religions all come from this source of God's inspiration to bring us back to Him, except for a few perversions and things that are man-made, created. That's the purpose of religion. Now, unfortunately, in our present day, there are so many perversions of religion that an entire group of opponents to religion, the new atheists, are not just unbelievers, they're actually out to destroy religion. And they are a group of intellectuals, and they've got some valid arguments that Baha'is would agree with, some of which are how about terrorism done in the name of religion, cutting people's heads off? It's toxic to civilization. So religion's gotten a bad rap by the people who use its name and pervert it. And so in that sense, religion has become an ideology and idolatry. But ideology, as I understand it, in my limited understanding of the distinction between them, would be that an ideology doesn't have to have any connection to God. Although you could say some religions fit that description, not having any connection to God. But the other part of your question, what was the first part?
That was the what does it mean to put an ideology above humanity, basically?
Oh, yeah. Well, the idea is, if you want to just use science, that the human being is the crown of creation. As far as we know, he's the more advanced evolution and the top of the intelligence and his ability to build civilizations. And if you look at it from a religious perspective, from a Baha'i writings, of course, the man is, the human being is the only creature who can know his creator consciously. I mean, all of the sentient beings are already expressing the will of God. According to Baha'i writings, as I understand them, they are the expression of the will of God in the contingent world, but they don't have a sense of self so much. There are some primates and maybe dolphins. We haven't decoded all the language of the whales. I mean, these are super intelligent beings, and they can even have forms of intelligence we don't. But if you consider man at the apogee or the crown of creation, from both the religious and the scientific perspective, then we should value the life of a human being more than anything. And certainly more than material objects, and more than certain ideas. So if you have ideas that kill you, if you have an ideology that can put to death 6 million Jews or 10 to 20 million Chinese people in a few years, then that ideology would be evil or satanic or idolatrous. Of course, the term idol is borrowed from religion and connotes the idea of worshiping something. And so that's why I broadened my definition of worship early on in the presentation to include something that you give fealty to or loyalty to, or you're dedicating your life to, or you've bought into to such a degree that all your actions are engaged with that.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that, for example, as you mentioned, terrorism is a clear example of placing something above the value of valuing something more than you value humans. Basically, you're willing to kill other people for the sake of an idea. And likewise, if you value your money more than the lives of other people, so that you're willing to either to kill or to reduce to great suffering and poverty, for example, other humans in order to maintain your own wealth, this would be another example of this kind of placing something else, something above the value of a human. As I understood it, that was for Hatcher, that's what he defined as ideology, basically. So even if something that we call a religion begins to advocate for, so for example, if you become a religious terrorist, you're no longer, from Hatcher's definition, practicing religion, you're practicing ideology. because no true religion, he argues, would put anything above the value of humanity and God. So that was my understanding of it. It's been a long time since I read the book, though. But isn't, if you get a chance, I think it may have been called Truth, Love, and Justice or something like that. I forget.
That's what it is. Yeah. Truth, Love, and Justice, I think.
But if you get a chance, Arik, you'd probably like it. And it's not a long read. It's pretty thin.
Yeah. Excellent book. I have several copies of it. I can give it away. So I think there's another dimension to this that was explicated by the Guardian. And it's in Advent of Divine Justice, in his discussion of racism, where he discusses the double crusade, purging the Baha'i community from the evils of racism, and then extending our efforts to the greater, wider community. And he says that a person who, I may be paraphrasing and truncating it too much, but he says that the person who is racist, maybe he doesn't use that term exactly, but someone who's infected with racism and acts upon these values. And he even says, even if they do it unconsciously, that they're guilty of usurping the prerogative of God. Now, that's really strong language. If the prerogative of God is to be above all else, highest value in existence, and he is the ruler and the one who sets things in order and has a destiny for humankind or a teleology for evolution, then if the human being is in the image of the creator, and you put yourself above another person, you're putting yourself above the image of God, and thus you're putting yourself above God himself. That's kind of my understanding of what usurping the prerogative of God might mean in part.
All right, everyone. We're gonna have to wrap up. We've reached 12:30. So I want to thank everyone today for everything, for being here and for all the wonderful things and all the, especially, we want to give particular thanks to Greg for his wonderful presentation. So before we close, let me give a few quick announcements. Today's program has been recorded and it is posted to the YouTube channel entitled South DeKalb Baha'i Unity Center, where you can view it and invite others to view it as well. For members of the Baha'i Faith, you are warmly encouraged to make a financial contribution to the South DeKalb Baha'i Fund, the Sandy Springs Baha'i Fund, and the National Baha'i Fund through the online contribution system, ocs.baha'i.us online. Or to mail a check to the Baha'i Unity Center at 2370 Wesley Chapel Road, Decatur, Georgia, 30035. Again, many thanks to everyone who worked together to make today's program possible. Our speaker, Greg Watson, our volunteer readers, Barbara Hinnix, who keeps this whole thing going, the spiritual assemblies of the Baha'is of South DeKalb and Sandy Springs, and of course, thank you to all of you who came and shared part of your day with us. So I'm Stephen Boynton, and until next time, stay safe and stay well. We'll now close with a prayer for the departed.
We haven't chose anyone to read that.
Okay, then just for today, I suppose I will do so. O my God, O thou forgiver of sins, bestower of gifts, dispeller of afflictions. Verily, I beseech thee to forgive the sins of such as abandoned the physical garment and have ascended to the spiritual world. O my Lord, purify them from trespasses, dispel their sorrows, and change their darkness into light. Cause them into the garden of happiness, cleanse them with the most pure water, and grant that they may behold thy splendors on the loftiest mount.